What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Chop It Up. We're sitting down with our dear friend Hunter Fullerton again. Happy Super Bowl Sunday to all our listeners out there. We hope you enjoy the big game today. But tonight, or excuse me, right now, we're going to be talking hoops in the NBA. Trade deadline just expired a couple of days ago. We got our guy Hunter, dear Heat fan. Grew up watching, those dominant Miami Heat teams. We're going to be getting in to our Miami Heat here in a little bit. But let's start it off with obviously the massive trade that no one expected that really kicked off this explosive trade deadline. Luka Doncic goes to the Lakers in a move to me that makes no sense. I don't understand why they did this move at all. I think there's something behind the scenes in the Mavs organization that could be a serious problem going forward. I'll let you get us started off first. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely a shocking trade. There had to be some things going on behind the scenes with the Mavs. I mean, in theory, they might have just given up a future. I don't want to be exaggerating anything, but possibly a top 10 player all time, definitely top 20 down the road, you know, barring no injuries. So yeah, crazy trade. I think the Lakers, on their end, I think it was a good move for them. They're setting up their future now. As long as Luka is happy, of course, with the Lakers, which is to be determined. But barring any, contract negotiation failures or anything like that, uh, uh, Luka should be a great fit with this Laker crew. And I think the Lakers just made a move for their future. The Mavs, on the other hand, I think they're still going to be a good squad. Um, but it's a downgrade. I mean, at the end of the day, going from Luka to AD, it's just a different level of player. We're going from all-time generational to, one of the best all-stars, we have today. But Luka's Luka's unique. He's a unicorn.
Do you think that this is a move that Mavs GM Nico Harrison made on his own? I mean, he talked in his interview about how Jason Kidd was on board and how Jason Kidd told Nico Harrison that he wanted AD without even having to tell them because, Nico said that's the kind of relationship they had. Well, Jason Kidd looked pissed in the press conference, so I'm not buying that. Jason Kidd was like, "Oh yeah, let's trade a top five player in the NBA right now and a guy who is going to be at the pinnacle of the league for the next 5 to 7 years as he's only 26 years old." Do you think this was a move that he made on his own? Do you think ownership had something to do with it? Because for me, like you look at this, and like you said, you trade a generational guy, a guy who will go down as a top 10 player of all time, in my opinion, as long as he stays healthy, for a aging all-star who maybe has a couple, years left in him if he stays healthy. We already saw that he can't. He just got hurt yesterday in his debut. Max Christie's nice. He's not a cornerstone franchise player. And then you get that 2029 first round pick. Who knows what that ends up looking like? And so for me, this move just doesn't make any sense. So do you think this falls on Nico Harrison? Do you think it's the organization as a whole? Like, who do you point the finger to?
There must be some issues within the organization because I do not see how this trade idea gets past multiple people. Like if there were multiple people looking at this decision beforehand, somebody would have called out Nico on his BS. I do not understand how this got through. This guy must have been moving in the dark. I don't know. He must have made this decision on his own, and now everybody has to back him up. But yeah, I don't know what they were thinking.
If you're a Dallas Mavericks fan and you're enjoying your evening, it's a nice week, the Mavs are playing some decent ball. I mean, even if this season doesn't work out how you want it to and it's a letdown after the finals run last year, I mean, this just has to be absolute heartbreak. I mean, where do you like there's just no logic behind it at all. Like there's no way you should sit down and be like, okay, we're going to trade this top five guy. He's on our team. He wants to be with us, despite the fact that we're in a relatively small market. And we're going to trade him for a guy who sprains his ankle every other week and, can drop 30 maybe once a month or once every year. And we're just going to trade a top five guy. Like, I just don't understand the logic behind that at all. The question I want to ask you is how much time do you think Nico Harrison has left in Dallas? Let's say they make the second round this year, average playoff run, and next year is just another kind of okay year for Dallas. Do you think he's out after that? Like, how much time do you think he has left?
That's tough. Obviously, then you're looking at the big dogs, the ownership and whatnot. Because to me, right, like Nico set himself up to be successful for years to come, but I sort of doubt that they're going to make the next step. I don't see any way that this team wins a championship together unless they bring in some other pieces. Uh, so I think Nico set himself up to be, you know, possibly in the, in the hot seat for years to come, but he's going to be successful every year. So it's hard to move on from a owner, I mean, sorry, from a GM that is, you know, at the end of the day winning, uh, for multiple years in a row. At some point when Mavs fans and Mavs ownership are like, okay, it's time, we need a championship. That might be the time to move on from Nico, but we'll see.
I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate. I think if they don't make a finals appearance somehow next year, which I don't see that happening with Kyrie and AD, I think he's out. I think that if he is able to survive and not just like keep his job, but like legitimately just survive living in Dallas. I know he just hired his own security team. Like there's people out there in the Dallas area that like want this guy murdered.
Yeah.
And I think, if this trade doesn't work out, and if we see a year from now, AD, his age is starting to show and Kyrie's not playing up to the level that people expect, I think we could easily see him be gone. Let's slap some grades on these things. For Dallas, their complete haul is Anthony Davis, Max Christie, who we talked about a little bit, a 2029 first round pick, and then they also pick up Caleb Martin in a deal with Philly. That's their haul. Obviously, they give up Luca, couple role players as well. What grade do you give the Mavs?
I mean, the Mavs it's got to be a C minus. I mean, like I said, they're still going to win, but they just gave away a player that we won't see. I mean, a generational player, incomparable. Like you can't compare him to anybody. You know what I mean? And so it can't be anything above a C.
Yeah, I gave him a C plus as well. I mean, AD, maybe it works in a perfect world where the stars align and they make a deep run. I like Max Christie. I think he's a cool player. He's fun to watch. He's not going to turn your franchise around. I think that was more just a contract thing more than anything else. And then, I mean, the 2029 first, before you make this trade, maybe getting a first round pick from the Lakers 3 or 4 years down the road is a great move because LeBron's aging, AD's getting old, but then you just gave him a guy who's going to be dominant for years to come. And so that 2029 first round pick likely isn't going to be much. Looking at the Lakers, I gave him a B plus. In the short term, I don't think this is like a crazy move. I don't see the LeBron Luca dynamic being super effective. I think they'll win games. I think they could be competitive in a playoff series. I just think, LeBron's getting older. I still have questions about their rim protection, especially with the Mark Williams trade not going through. And then, Maxi Kleber and Markieff Morris, I'm not really sure what they bring to the table. I have some questions about their front court. I think Luka and LeBron are going to be really fun to watch. But like you mentioned earlier, that long-term effect of knowing that you have a guy in Luka that is going to be at the pinnacle of the league for years to come, as long as you can retain him and you can sign him to that massive contract extension and keep him in LA, which I think you'll want to do, then I think they're going to be set for a long time. And because of that, I give them a B plus.
Yeah, I'm going to take a slightly different take, and I'm going to go A or A plus. I just think that Luke is the type of guy that if you have him on your roster, you just got to put a couple pieces around him, and you have a shot for a championship. And now the Lakers will be able to do that for years to come. Luca, to me, he even though obviously there was some you know messed up relationships in Dallas, to me he struck me as somebody that wants to be a franchise player, wants to stick with a team for a long time. So I think the Lakers just set him up for success, set themselves up for success um, for years to come. They'll be competing for titles, you know, for a while now, in my opinion. So
Last thing I want to hit on the Lakers, at least in the short term, is do you see with Luka and LeBron, how do you see this shaking out in the short term, just in terms of a playoff run? Do you think that's a team that could go in? I mean, right now they're sitting at, a ninth or 10th seed in the West, probably going to be a playoff team unless they can make a run and move up in the standings. Do you think that this is a team that could make some serious noise in the playoffs? Do you see them beating an OKC or a Memphis or even a Minnesota in a later matchup?
I think they can make some noise. Luka's a scary man, to be lined up across in the playoffs. That being said, the only thing that sort of is questionable right now to me is the defensive end of things. I think Luka and LeBron, that dynamic will be fine. I think LeBron was already sort of attempting to pass the torch to AD. AD just didn't want to grab it, and so I think that'll be a fine dynamic. Um, Obviously the defense, you go from a one of the best defensive players in the league, best rim protectors dropping down to Luka Doncic. So that could be an issue. But I could see this team making some noise in the playoffs for sure.
Let's keep it in the West. De'Aaron Fox is traded from Sacramento, the place where he was drafted. They finally move him on to San Antonio. And for whatever reason, the Kings bring in Zach LaVine. This move didn't make a ton of sense to me, at least. Maybe you have different thoughts on it. Chicago is also involved in the deal. They get Kevin Herter and a bag of chips. But let's talk about the Spurs here first. They get their point guard. They get De'Aaron Fox to pair up with those young wings, Stephon Castle and guys of that nature that are really young, really exciting. And then obviously the grand prize is being able to pair him with Victor Wembanyama, who's a guy that's going to be, the best player in this league for a long time, I think, as soon as he finds his groove. And now that he has De'Aaron Fox, I think this is a really scary team. I like what the Spurs did here. I like to see teams that have a young star immediately start to take moves forward and try and, get their franchise into a championship caliber team. I don't like it when teams stall out and kind of just wait for their player to develop and hope that things shake out in their way. And then for Sacramento, this is just kind of a disaster of a franchise, in my opinion. Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan are back together on the same team. We just saw that in Chicago, and they were terrible. So not sure what this move means for Sacramento, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think as far as for the Spurs, I think this is a great trade for them. Beyond getting just an all-star level point guard, I think De'Aaron Fox will really fit into this system well. They're going to get Wembanyama running the floor. De'Aaron Fox loves to run the floor. It's going to be exciting, alley-oop target. And then beyond that, he's going to be paired along Stephon Castle for years to come. And that's going to be a scary defensive backcourt. I mean, he can lock up just about any guard in the league. And then De'Aaron, that's the swiper. So I think it's going to be exciting backcourt. And the Spurs really set themselves up, to continually improve. So I think this is a great trade for the Spurs. Like as moving on to the Kings, I think it's more of just a mediocre move for a mediocre franchise. They're setting themselves up to be not the worst team in the league, but nowhere near the best. And so, um, sometimes I question moves like that because if you're not competing, why are you taking on, a large contract, a guy that's scoring 24 points per game, 25, but also doesn't really affect winning that much, in my opinion.
Yeah, this fall from grace for the Kings just doesn't really make any sense to me. And I mean, this was a team that we saw a couple years ago in a game seven going up against the Warriors team, which maybe isn't the same Warriors team that we've seen in years past. But at the same time, it felt like they were trending in that right direction. It felt like they had that Kentucky connection in the backcourt between De'Aaron Fox and Malik Monk. You bring in Sabonis, it feels like things are going the right way. And then all of a sudden, Mike Brown gets fired and things just seem to fall apart. I think the Sacramento organization is a complete disaster, in my opinion. I gave this grade a D plus for them. I don't understand the move of bringing in Zach LaVine. Like you said, I don't think he affects winning. I think he's a really good stat pattern. I think he's really athletic. He's fun to watch. He could be a good three man on a championship caliber team, but that's not going to happen in Sacramento. That's just the reality of the situation. And with the Spurs, I think this is a great move. I think in 2 to 3 years, this is a team that we're going to see at the top of the Western Conference. Just as that young talent continues to develop and learns how to play with one another, you bring in Fox, who has that veteran leadership. He's used to carrying young guys, especially in small markets. And so I think bringing in that experience at the point guard position really helps them a lot. So really excited for San Antonio. I gave this grade an A. Super excited to watch what the Spurs can do. My only concern for them is how much time's left for Greg Popovich. I know we've kind of seen him in battle health issues here and there. I'm interested to see, just how much time left he has with this team and how they transition moving on from a coach that's been there for so long to whoever the next man up is.
Yeah, I'm going to match your grades here, actually. Not to have a boring take, but like I said, I think it's a poor move for the Kings. More of just like a lateral move, like you're saying. This team, is going to be in the same positions that they were, if not just slightly worse. Um, but I think, like you're saying, it's a great move for the Spurs. The only thing I question right now, like they probably won't be in win mode, this year and next year. Just in my opinion, the backcourt, is going to struggle shooting, so they need to add somebody at the 3 or 4 that can really stretch the floor, things like that. They have some pieces to add, but uh, they're setting themselves up to definitely just trend upwards. especially right along with Victor Wembanyama's growth. So I think this is a good trade for the Spurs, and I agree with your A grade.
Let's take it down to South Beach. A team that we both care about very passionately. Um, 2.5 years ago, we were in Denver watching the NBA Finals as Jimmy Butler carried the Miami Heat franchise to their second finals appearance in 4 years. Unfortunately, lost both of those finals, but here we are 2 years later. It's 2025. Jimmy Butler has been traded to the Golden State Warriors for, let me check this real quick. Oh, yeah. Andrew Wiggins, Kyle Anderson, Davion Mitchell, who I actually kind of like, and a 2025 first round protected pick. That's what we got for a guy who took us to the finals twice in 5 years with Bam Adebayo, a Tyler Hero who couldn't really stay healthy, didn't have him for either of those finals runs, really. Um, and that's what we got for him. Not a Kevin Durant, not a young superstar, not more draft picks, not Jonathan Kuminga. Andrew Wiggins, Kyle Anderson, and Davion Mitchell. The floor is yours. I'll let you go first.
And this is a tough one. It hits home. First off, thank you to Jimmy for delivering us to the finals, not once, or yeah, not once, but twice. That bubble finals year, finals run still counts. That was sick. Anyway, yeah, I think this trade, um, honestly, I will take a slightly different take than you. I think for the Heat, this is the best we could have done in the position right now. If you zoom out, I think our franchise in the last couple years, I hate to say we failed because we've been competing, but right when we were right there, we had multiple chances. We're talking Damian Lillard, uh, uh, Kevin Durant, Donovan Mitchell. We have multiple chances to just take that next step, and we missed on them. So zooming out, I think the last couple years they were exciting, but also you could say disappointing in the sense that we missed out on adding that extra piece. But zooming back in, I think right now this was about the best we could do. We at the end of the day, we had to get Jimmy off the team. Um, Things were not looking good, uh, and so we have to move on at some point. Take our losses and try to move forward. So that's sort of my opinion on it. Take your loss. Let's see what happens. Down the road. And we're clearing up cap space in a couple years. Theoretically, we should have a lot of money, not this offseason, but the next to make some moves. So it might be, we got to be patient, Heat fans. We got to be patient.
Yeah, you're 100% right in terms of moving on from Jimmy. You had to do it. He wasn't going to play another game in a Heat uniform. And looking at some of the stories of just how that went down, you could see a bunch of different things on Twitter and whatnot about, Pat Riley's crying in a meeting about how they both lost their fathers and trying to relate to him. And then Pat wanted to play Jimmy, but Mickey Arison, the owner, he didn't want Jimmy to play, but Mickey Arison's on vacation and just all this weird stuff. Really seems like a little bit of dysfunctionality in the Heat organization, at least in the front office, which we're not used to seeing, especially with Pat Riley at the helm of that. I don't mind the haul. I think Andrew Wiggins is a quality guy. I'm actually really excited about Davion Mitchell. Seems like a guy that really fits the Heat culture, especially on the defensive end. I gave this grade a B minus for us. I think the Miami haul is not bad. I think this is still going to be a team, because they're in the Eastern Conference. You're going to see them in that, their ceiling's probably a 4 seed and their floor is probably, a 10 seed, a playing team, something of that level. I think, the ability of Bam and Tyler will carry them to be somewhat competitive. But like you said, eventually you got to get these guys some help. We've seen so many Instagram photoshops of Kevin Durant in a Heat jersey, Bradley Beal in a Heat jersey, Dame, Donovan Mitchell, all these guys. And, eventually Pat Riley's got to stop hitting foul balls and he's got to hit a home run. Like they call you the Godfather, not the stepdad. Like you got to do something. Like you
Yeah,
have to make a move. And
good
so,
point.
Jimmy's gone. You have the cap space. You're in Miami. It's a place that people want to play. I think the only issue is that people kind of view Heat culture now as, maybe not as prominent as it was before this Jimmy drama went down. I think the culture takes a little bit of a hit. But at the same time, I think people are aware of Eric Spoelstra is one of the best coaches in the NBA. I think people want to play with Bam, especially looking at the connections he's made during his time on Team USA. And so I'm really excited to see what moves they can make. I'm just not sure how much hope I have after what I've seen in the last 3 to 5 years. And just looking at the Jimmy window, I just want to pay, our respects to him. I mean, this was a guy that he had a young Bam Adebayo. He had some good role guys. I mean, Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, Goran Dragic early on. Like those are all quality guys that played a role in those runs. But at the end of the day, like you had to be able to find that third piece, and they just never did. I mean, and like we talked about, numerous superstars were in rumor circles about being able to bring them, and they wanted to come play with Jimmy and Bam. And unfortunately, it just never happened that way. But for him to be able to lead us to two finals in 5 years, really impressive stuff, especially if you look at the stat lines that he put up in the playoffs. And would it have been nice for him to show up and maybe give us a little bit better positioning through the regular season? Sure. But at the end of the day, you got to reward the guy for taking us to two finals. Ultimately, we didn't. And so I wish him the best of luck in Golden State there. Let's talk about the Warriors for a little bit because now you have Steph Curry and Jimmy together. You also have Jimmy and Draymond in the same locker room, which could be electric, could be a UFC fight night in there at any moment in time, just waiting for that report to come out. I gave this grade an A- for the Warriors, simply just because of the fact that, their window to win is right now. Steph's not getting any younger, Draymond's not getting any younger. So to bring in, a third star essentially that can score the ball, he can play defense when it's needed. I think this is a good move. I don't necessarily think they're going to win the finals or come out of the West, but I think it's their best chance to be competitive right now.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Jimmy offers, he's a player that likes to move the rock. He's all around guy, and that's sort of what the Warriors, that what they like. Plus, obviously, he'll have spacing around him, guys that can shoot, so it doesn't really matter, you know, what his production is from the 3-point line. And I agree. I think from the Warriors, this is the best they can do. I think they're committed to riding out this Steph Curry era, and I think that's pretty respectful. I don't know if I see them winning a chip, in the next few years, but I think if you're committed to riding it out till Steph's done, this is a good move. Try to get this is as good as you can get, probably, right? Um, Now it's a different story if you're like, okay, we're not in a position to win, we sort of need to start over. Then this move is sort of moving backwards. But I think they're committed. Um, they're gonna ride this out till Steph, uh, retires, and so I think this is the best move you can make at this point for them. I don't know, like I said, I don't think it's gonna get them a chip anytime soon, but it makes them better for sure.
Let's move on from the Jimmy drama. Happy to see him in Golden State. Wishing him all the best. Looking at a couple of these other moves we're going to get into, none of them are as prominent as the three we just talked about, but nonetheless, still very important. A lot of role guys moving around this time of the year. The Lakers had traded Dalton Connect, their star rookie, for Mark Williams. Looked like they were going to get their five-man, finally have a guy to play center. Just a little bit of rim protection for this team that's very wing and guard heavy. But Mark Williams fails his physical, gets sent back to Charlotte. So the Lakers actually get Connect back, which I like. I think Dalton Connect's going to be a really good player. I think he's a great scorer to come off the bench, especially when LeBron retires. I think you can see him stepping up into a scorer's role. I'm have some questions about him defensively, but on the offensive side of the ball, I think he's really good. However, I do think this is a loss for the Lakers. As good as Dalton Connect is, I think being able to bring in a young center and Mark Williams, a guy that, really hasn't hit his full potential yet. He has great rim protection. He can play defense and he has an impact on the offensive side of the end as well. And we've seen how well Luka has played with these 7-1, 7-2 bigs. And so for this trade not to go through definitely hurts the Lakers. Also, just kind of weird to see this trade fall through as well after the failed physical. Do you think this is a win for LA? Do you think it's good for Charlotte to get Mark Williams back? Where do you stand on this?
I don't think LA should have moved on from Dalton Connect. I agree with you. I think he's going to be a good player in this league. I see him someday being, a very effective six man, or if not, like sort of a third piece on a team, a very quality third piece. It's putting up 15 to 20 a night, gets you the occasional 25, 30. Uh, but the problem is now you're telling your rookie guy who needs to develop, right? Rookies are vulnerable in this league. You're telling your rookie that, hey, you weren't that valuable to us. Um, and obviously Dalton doesn't have much, negotiation room, but that's got to hurt. And I could see it hurting his development, at least with the team. And so I think that is you know, this falling through is not a good situation for the Lakers. I don't know that they should have made this move in the first place, Mark Williams is a good player, does give them Luka that, lob threat, things like that, that big man. But, it really hurts the development of your rookie now, in my opinion. So, um, yeah.
Yeah, and that goes for both teams. I mean, when you look at Charlotte, I mean, you have a young center in Mark Williams, and obviously having LaMelo, who's an elite playmaker. Like having those two guys, their dynamic has been somewhat solid. I would expect it to continue to grow. But, when you have two young guys and you essentially, like you said, you tell them, hey, we're going to move on. We think this other guy, will fit our scheme better. We like him more than you. It's just kind of weird. It's almost like an awkward breakup, get back together situation. Very strange. I don't think it's like a drastic move for either team. I mean, if the Lakers were able to get Mark Williams, maybe that helps them a little bit more in the short term, just with their rim protection. I think Charlotte's just kind of always running around in a circle of mediocrity in terms of who they're bringing in until they can get a real star to play there, which I'm not sure is going to happen. And I think the clock's ticking on LaMelo's time there as well. That I'm just not sure what the Hornets are going to do. Not a huge move, but I think it was something worth noting about. Let's move on to the Cleveland Cavaliers, the best team in the Eastern Conference right now. They ship off Karis LeVert for DeAndre Hunter. Kind of a similar move, a 3-and-D guy for another 3-and-D guy. Maybe
Yeah.
a little bit more emphasis on the D with DeAndre Hunter. Pause.
Hey, yo, hey, yo.
But they bring in another wing guy, and this is a Cavs team that has been on fire this season. I'm interested to see if they can keep that going into the postseason. We've seen them fall short in the second round a few times in the last couple of years after having a solid regular season showing. But I like this move. I think being able to add a defensive presence on the wing, especially when you're going up against these teams like New York and Boston and Milwaukee, teams that have elite scoring on the perimeter. I think being able to sacrifice maybe some of that scoring with LeVert for some of that defensive presence and size that you get with DeAndre Hunter will go a long way for this Cleveland team.
Yeah, I think I think it'll work out being a good move for Cleveland. The only question I have is Hunter really took a step forward this season, and so now coming into this Cavs organization, can he now take a step back and sort of move back to that role he was 2 or 3 years ago? Will be what I look for. Right now he's on the edge of scoring 20 points per game. He's not going to do that in Cleveland. Can he step back and really, put that emphasis on his defense? Once again, like he had to do, 2, 3 years ago when he was scoring 15 to 13 points a game, because that's the type of guy he's going to be in Cleveland. So I think it'll work out well for the Cavs as long as DeAndre can make that, adjustment, which I'm sure he can. But he has to understand that, he's being brought in to knock down threes and play defense now. He's not a cornerstone offensive piece, if you will.
Random side question here, just as we're focusing on these two teams, but what are the Hawks doing? Like you have Trae Young, he's been there forever. You made the Eastern Conference Finals a couple years ago. You haven't even sniffed that since. It seems like Trae's on the trade deadline every year. It never happens. I just don't understand what this organization's doing. They're kind of a mess, similar to Charlotte, where you have a star guard who struggles on the defensive end of the floor a little bit, and obviously Trae Young, not a good defender whatsoever. And so I just don't like. I mean, what are they doing? Where's the direction of this organization? To me, it seems like they're lost. But maybe you have other ideas.
Nope. I am absolutely confused as well. It seems to me they have a good point guard, you know, not a not going to win a championship by himself, and they're just making lateral moves, bringing in average subpar guys every single year, and pretty much just playing mix and match, playing the memory game with these average guys. I mean, they're just switching around their roster, making no moves forward or backwards. So I have no idea what's going on over there.
Yeah, not to mention they trade Bogdanovich as well. So just kind of an interesting move there as well. Speaking of organizations that aren't going anywhere, let's finish it up with the Toronto Raptors. They get Brandon Ingram. I think this is a lateral move. I think BI is fun to watch. I always respect his game. I think he's a really good player. I think he could be, a number three scorer on a championship level team. But he's just never been on a championship level team. I mean, he was on those young Laker teams before any of those guys really developed. Then the whole New Orleans project with him and Zion and Lonzo, that went in the dumpster pretty quickly after Zion decided He's just going to eat his career away. And so now he goes to Toronto, a team that doesn't really have any sense of direction either. They're at the bottom of the Eastern Conference right now. I don't really want to talk about the Raptors as much because who really cares? But what do you think this move makes for Brandon Ingram, and how do you see him being remembered for his career?
Oh, I think Brandon Ingram, I think he's a good player, but respectfully, I don't think he will be remembered, to be honest. Besides, diehard NBA fans, who's talking about BI in 10 years? I mean, sorry, but I mean that's just the reality of it. I think honestly you can sort of group like these Pelicans, the Kings, the Hawks, the Raptors, all these teams we're talking about, they're all teams with star players, but they're not actually good enough players to win you a championship. And now they're trying to make lateral moves to build around these players that aren't good enough in the first place to win. So, I think all these guys, I hate to say it, but like even like Zion. Zion obviously had a legacy in college, so he'll be remembered for that. But Zion, who's on a higher level than Brandon Ingram, but like Domantas Sabonis, Brandon Ingram, Trey Young, Zion, all these guys. I understand there's levels to it, but all these guys are on average teams. They're not good enough to win a championship on their own. So who's going to really talk about them, at least at the NBA level, 15 years from now? That's my thought on it. Outside of obviously, guys that watch the game, but
Yeah, I think you probably loop all those guys into the category of, like fun to watch, but never really had an impact on winning. Similar to like the
absolutely.
Zach LaVines and the DeMar DeRozans that we
Mm-hmm.
were talking about earlier.
Yep.
It'll be interesting to see how all these trades work out. We got a little bit of time left before we let you go. Like we mentioned at the beginning of the show, it is Super Bowl Sunday. Chiefs, Eagles, Super Bowl 59 going down in New Orleans. Chiefs looking for a three-peat. Eagles looking to get their revenge from 2 years ago. Um, I picked the Eagles this morning. That was my official pick. I think that's America's pick. So I am going to side with Philly there. If I was betting money, I would probably go Kansas City. I'm not betting money because I'm an NCAA athlete, and you're not allowed to do that, obviously. But where do you stand on this?
You know, I hate the Eagles. I hate the Chiefs. So I think this is just, when I woke up, this is what I'm seeing in my head. We'll see, obviously this is going to come out after the Super Bowl. So we'll see if this stands up. But I sort of think it's probably going to be a 0-0 ball game. Uh, About to go into overtime. Jalen Hurts takes a knee to head into overtime. And then the refs call, he took a knee a little bit too far back. Chiefs get the safety. It's 2-0 Chiefs. They take the Super Bowl win. Um, just like they have been all year with the refs on their side. So I think that's my prediction. I would be pretty happy with that game for me personally. But anyway,
Yeah, sounds a little bit like a salty Cowboys fan there, if I had to guess. But yeah, I mean
yeah,
this game, I like Saquon, I like Jalen Hurts. The Eagles as a franchise, I don't love. I'm not a huge Sirianni guy. Can't stand Kansas City. Obviously, growing up a Patriots fan, the Mahomes to Brady comparisons don't it just doesn't add up to me. Brady beat him both times in the playoffs. One of them was in Kansas City. The other one was, when Kansas City was at the top of their game and Brady pounded them. So that until either Mahomes eclipses 7 Super Bowls, or Brady comes out of retirement and Mahomes can find a way to beat him in a meaningful game, then I just don't see Mahomes ever passing him, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously excited to watch the game tonight, but definitely was hoping to see maybe a Detroit or a Buffalo, maybe even like a Baltimore in there. But this is what we get. Chiefs Eagles just not great, not what anyone really wanted. I hope it's a good game just for the sake of, it is the biggest game of the year.
yeah,
But rather than that, I mean, I could really care less about either one of these teams. That is going to wrap it up for this episode of Chop It Up. Broke down some NBA trades for you guys, gave a little Super Bowl insight. Probably not the most valuable information you're going to get on the big game, but we are sure you will enjoy it. Thanks for coming in, Hunter. We appreciate your time, man. For all our listeners, be sure to hit the comment section below, hit the like, subscribe. We're going to be getting into a little bit more professional track and field in the coming months, so be sure to tune in for
sweet.
that. And Hunter, thank you for coming on, my man.
Yep. Peace.